Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast, brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker School. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Hey, welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Show, everyone. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, and people, we are in for a treat. This has been an episode that I have been looking forward to recording for months. Why, you might ask? Well, we have the fabulous Josh Linkner here. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much, Jane. What a wonderful pleasure to be with you today.
Well, I am so excited. Now, I have a bio here for you, but I actually want to talk about the bio because I think it's an important lesson out of the chute. As a podcaster, I get lots of full-page bios, and then I typically will try to just draw out a few ideas throughout the podcast, but you gave me options, and I love that, and I think that this is something that we could be doing for our clients. Talk about how you guys present the bio.
Yeah, so just through a lot of experience, having given now over 1,000 paid keynotes around the world, you try to refine, and we're always trying to work on our game. So one thing I do from a bio perspective is instead of sending one bio, we send four. So there's like a one-sentence bio, there's like a three-liner short mini bio, there's a mini extended bio, and then a really long one. And so if they want to just print one line in their program, they've got it. If they need a little short one for an introduction, they've got that. So the idea is to provide options and just make it really clear for those that we serve.
I don't really understand how a jazz guitarist got to be such an innovator, but let me just read this first part of the bio, the tagline. 5-time tech entrepreneur, hyper-growth CEO, 2 times New York Times bestselling author, venture capitalist, and keynote speaker on a mission to drive creativity, innovation, and reinvention, Josh Linkner. So that is just something that people would go, okay, interesting. And we need to pull out the idea that you had 5 tech companies which sold for a combined value of over 200 million. That's a pretty key item right there. You want to know that people are credible, and this guy oozes credibility. I'm sure people know of you already.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's funny when we're writing, and I know you obviously, a lot of our listeners today are speakers, both emerging speakers and experienced ones. And right. One of the things that I always encourage people to do when thinking about a bio is it's not a resume. So the bio that you have as a speaker, you want to essentially sell the underlying value and reinforce, as you point out, the credibility of what you bring to the stage, right. Not so much list out every accomplishment that you've ever had. And right. So if you reverse engineer it as a reader, saying, all right, what line by line, what's going to captivate people's attention? What's going to make me stand out from competitors? And what's going to make it feel like it's irresistible to hire this person to join as a keynote speaker?
Yeah, and irresistible is obviously something that is going for you because, let me see if I have this straight. It's on the record that you speak 165 times per year at $35K a pop. So let's just talk about that for a second, Josh. What drives you to speak to a degree? Is that going to be your next year? Are you going to do that in 2020, or are you starting to see yourself ease back a little bit?
First of all, I thank you for asking. I do it because I love it, and it's so intrinsically rewarding. I know many of your listeners, there's nothing wrong with making money, and that's great. And obviously, we want to talk about that too. But the value that you can share with audiences and move the needle for them in their lives and their communities, to me, that's the real juice. I really do it because I love it, not because I have to. At the same time, I love the challenge of it. I love can you figure all this out? And I love sort of reverse engineering the industry. And I'm a competitive guy. It's just like, how can we win more? And so it all kind of feeds into it. But
you want to win every speaking engagement that comes your way, don't you, Josh? That's what it is.
Well, I do like winning, but I'll tell you that. So I did 160, right around 163, 165 maybe was the largest year I did. This year I'll do about 120. So I've tapered it back a little bit, but I'm still in the sort of high velocity zone.
Yeah. And talk about what that means in terms of balance, et cetera. You're married, are you not? Do you have children?
I am. And so one of the things that, I get asked a lot, I'm sure you do too, is, how do you establish balance? So I do. I have 4 kids. I have a 22, a 20, and I have 3-year-old twins.
Okay, you just set this whole conversation right on its ear. 3-year-old twins. I have 5 grandkids, so I can totally, we have a lot of 4 of them are under 5 right now. So I don't even know how you are managing all of this. So how do you take some chunks of time off, or how do you manage?
You know, thanks for asking. First of all, I have the most amazing wife, my wife Tia, who I just love dearly. I don't
I would
deserve her.
say
She's just
yes. She gets
incredible.
some big props. Big props.
Big, big props. But you know, the funny thing is, you know, when you really dial in your speaking business and you get good at becoming efficient, it sounds much scarier than it is. I mean, if you just break down, just call it 120, that's 10 a month. And you're going to have
Hmm.
some months that are busier than others. October will be very busy and December will be very not busy. And
Hmm.
then even, you know, 10 in a month, that's, you know, 2.5 per week or so. And you've got 40-ish plus hours in a week. It's really not that bad. I mean, you're on stage only so many hours. You're in the airport more than you're on stage, obviously. And then, you know, I've become pretty efficient in terms of my preparation. I've customized every keynote. I've never done the same one twice, but you get pretty efficient in how you manage the prep work and the delivery. And so it sounds worse than it is.
Yes, it does. And I kudos to you for doing it and for having the stamina to do that. And I would ask, is there a team all around you? How many people do you have that are working on Team Josh to make all of this look good? You probably recognized the value of team all the way back to your days when you were starting and flourishing companies, right? Of course.
Yeah, great question. First of all, there's no such thing as a solo win here. I mean, even a boxer who's the only person physically in the ring has a
Hmm.
team around him or her to make them a champion. So
Right.
I give so much credit to my team. I do have a pretty extensive team. I just want to point out one thing real quickly, and then I'll answer your
Sure.
question. So I do 120 speeches a year or whatever. That's not for everybody. And so for someone listening, if you only want to do 5 a year or 10 or 50, like whatever's good for you, the
Yeah.
listener, is okay. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm espousing something that they need to live up to. You can do more
Sure.
or less. It's just whatever's right for you. And there's plenty of room for all of us in this business.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, back to your question on team. So the largest company that I built, I had over 500 team members. And so you're exactly right. You can only scale individually so much. Currently, I have a wonderful partner in crime named Jordan Brode, who's been with me since the beginning. And he sort of runs the business aspects of our speaking efforts and is really on the front line of selling also.
Mm.
I also have a full-time admin. I have a full-time marketing person. I have another full-time content person. And I have a group CFO who's involved in I'm involved in like a lot of different businesses. So he oversees our finances for speaking, but also several other things that I do.
Right. And I just think that I really want people to hear that it's not just you. And I think that there's some fear around, I think maybe that first hire or the first and second hire and spending the money to be able to make more money. Can you talk a little bit about that fear, Josh?
Yeah, so I think a good way to think about it is that, you know, what is your best and highest calling and what's that value? So if your best and highest calling is writing and speaking and it's, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars an hour of value that you're creating, that means every time you're doing something, not that you don't mind doing it, I'll do anything, I'll sweep the floor. It's not a pride thing or an ego thing at all. But just the question is, you know, there's only so many hours in the day. And so if you can spend your hours doing the highest value stuff, anything that's not in that category, ideally, if you can have someone else do, it actually amplifies your economics. And so if you're worth, I'm just making up a number, $2,500 an hour, and you can
Hmm.
pay someone $25 an hour to schedule your meetings and book your flights, like that's a no-brainer. So
Simple
I agree that
math.
you want to take it simple, take it slow, you know, get some real revenue before you hire a full-blown team. But in the end, you can ultimately scale yourself past the 24-hour limit only when you have a team around you.
Right. That's beautiful. So, talk about kind of your early days of coming onto the speaking scene. Did you get asked to speak because you had sold these companies and it was so successful? I don't really know the story there, the backstory.
Yeah, so I spoke often as a CEO of my own company, and I
Hmm.
really enjoyed it. Like I felt like I was in the zone. I love the performing arts aspect of it. I love moving the needle for people. At the same time, I realized that I was an amateur. I maybe was an okay amateur. I'd get good feedback, but I certainly was not a professional. So I said, all right, how would I go? Because I was so passionate about it. How do I go from being a good amateur to at least a bad professional?
Okay.
And so the first thing I did is I worked with a speaking coach and I really studied the craft. I mean, for like 18 months, I worked with a speaking coach. And even today, doing, you know, again, I've done over 1,000 paid keynotes. I watch video, I study the craft. I constantly looking at things, even the technical details of choreography and breathing and gesture and posture and vocal inflection. So one core message I would give to anyone who's listening is, I don't think there's a silver bullet in anything. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to be a neurosurgeon, you've got to be really good at your craft and sacrifice and work on it. You want to be a professional athlete or on Broadway. These are things that take sacrifice and real practice. So and I've seen this, and I know you have too, I'm sure, Jane, like someone who says, oh, I gave a great speech at my aunt's wedding, I'm going to go be a professional keynote speaker.
Right.
And I'm not being discouraging, by the way. That's awesome that you gave a great speech, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're ready to take the biggest stage just yet. It means that you probably, like I did, and like many people did, have some real work to do. And so I just encourage people, wherever you want to take your speaking business, to treat it as a real business, like the same way you would if you were a practicing attorney or an anesthesiologist or anywhere in between.
Mm-hmm. Opening up any business. And I think that I was just saying this on the last podcast I've recorded, is that people get into the business because they love the performing part, but there's so much that goes on, and really understand it. And you have studied, and I'm really happy we've had you on the show to be able to show people the kind of work that it took for you to go from where you started to where you are now. So you were speaking as the CEO of your company, and you went from, kind of up one level to get better and better and better. And then when you sold, was the business just there, or was that when you really started to study the speaking industry because you said, this is what I want to do next?
Yeah, good question. So I was the CEO of my firm for 11 years. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I really wanted to pursue this. So I hired a chairman. I hired a new CEO. I became chairman of the firm, and it gave
Okay.
me more time. I then wrote a book. And so my book published in 2011. Was doing some speaking before that, but that really started to get things moving. And what I did is I essentially studied the speaking business the same way that I studied, applied rigor in building a software company. So I started saying, all right, who are all the players? How does the decision get made? Why is someone $50,000 versus $5,000? Who are the, what is the headwinds? How does the competitive landscape shake out? How does it, how do payments work? And so I really took the time to study the industry and the specifics, not only the onstage performance, but what do you have to do off stage so that you're able to get on stage, and ideally in higher volumes and higher fees.
Beautiful. I love everything that you're saying. Now, one of the things that I noticed in one of your videos is that when you're speaking, when you're delivering, you really use a lot of your own language, like change the rules to get the jewels. That's have you really set out and said, okay, I'm going to have some very specific language? It's almost like there's a little TM after everything that you're saying. Talk a little bit. That I'm part of Dan Sullivan's strategic coach, and he talks about naming everything, all of your IP. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't necessarily do it from an IP standpoint, although that's probably smart to do. I should. But the way I look at it is that as a thought leader, someone who wants to command sort of higher dollars and be on big stages, you have
Mm-hmm.
to share some surprising truths. You have to share a fresh way of looking at things that people, either that it's really new, or you're saying something that exists in a new and fresh way. So
Right.
where I see a threshold sometimes for keynote speakers is if they come out and they say a lot of platitudes and cliches, like you got to believe in yourself and you got to go for it. And, Apple is really innovative. And we all kind of roll our eyes because we all know that already. So I try to say things in a surprising way and try to reveal surprising truths so that people feel like they're hearing stuff for the first time. And that applies to my language. It also applies to my storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Netflix is awesome. They're a great company. I'll never talk about Netflix because everybody talks about Netflix. I want to talk about some little bank in Poland that you've never heard of that's doing something in a creative way. So I think as a thought leader, we should take it as a responsibility to use our own language and our own thought leadership as opposed to just regurgitating others.
As an awesome example, I just used your WestJet story, talking about all of the people who were sitting out on the tarmac for 7 hours on an Air Canada flight, and a WestJet team member comes and brings them pizza. I just used that actually with Air Canada. In a little thing that I was just doing. But those are stories that maybe not everybody's talking about, and you heard about it and you pulled it into your presentation. How often are you ripping stories straight from the headlines or from social media?
Well, so one of the things, and just zoom back in for 1 second, we've tried to systematize every aspect of our business.
Mm-hmm.
From how do we interact with bureaus? I work with every major bureau that's out there. How do we generate lead flow? We get 5 to 15 inbound inquiries a day. How do we manage social? And one of the things that we systematized is research. And so what I'm doing is I'm constantly collecting stories, and we catalog them and archive them. And
Mm.
what I did is I built a systematic approach though. So we made a list of 7 criteria that would qualify for a story to be interesting for us. One
Right.
of them is it revealing a surprising truth? One of them is there an underdog wins kind of story? Is there a killer stat? Is it really funny? So as my team and I are looking for content, we run each thing we see against this filter and just quickly decide, is it a keeper or not? So we discard 9 out of 10 stories, but the ones that we keep, even if we're not ready to use it now, we archive it based on industry and geography. And then to the extent that there's an opportunity that comes up in that industry, for example, we can then go back to it and say, oh, we found this killer story about transportation. What a perfect opportunity to use it. And so I'm constantly building this library, which then I can pick and choose and ultimately deploy on behalf of clients.
Oh my gosh, that is so good, Josh. Okay, may I ask how you store all this information? Is there an app that you use to put it all? What are some of your app hacks that, I mean, you're a big technology guy, so you may be using something very sophisticated here.
You know, it's funny. I'm always trying to keep it simple, and I actually use something that's very not sophisticated. We just use Evernote.
Oh, I
And
was
Evernote is
wondering
like,
if you used Evernote. I love Evernote. Okay,
love it.
cool. Okay.
Simple, easy. And so what we do, though, we catalog them in a certain way. So we tag them based on things, like I said,
Yeah,
industry, company size, geography,
you
et
can
cetera.
search them.
And then there's an abstract, and then we put links in there, and we can grab photos and stuff. So we have this huge library that's accessible to us that we've built up
Beautiful.
over the years.
Beautiful. So everything is searchable because you're tagging it smartly on the front end, which is so important. So, kind of on that same vein, I know we're kind of going all over the place here. What do you guys use? Do you have your own CRM that you've adopted, or do you use one of the mainstream ones?
We use a mainstream one. Actually, we're just in the middle of switching over, and I forgot the name. I'm embarrassed to say of the new one, but
Okay.
it's pretty simple. Like in our business, you can do, even if you're doing high volume, it's not a complex CRM need. So I
Yeah.
would say to anyone listening, just pick your favorite one, keep it simple, and go. It's more about
Yeah.
doing the reps than it is, sort of working on the
Sure.
total nuances. I think any commercially available CRM system works fine.
Yeah, and we've been recommending Karma CRM for speakers just because it was made for speakers. And what's important about that, and that's why I brought up the question, was that everything is searchable. If you want to find all your clients in the insurance industry, hopefully you've tagged them insurance so that you can go back and do that. Really good. Okay, talking about just everything that you do is just done it's so systematized and I just have a million questions that I could be asking you. I'll have to try to keep this short. Talk about your PowerPoint, because I loved seeing the movement on the screen of your PowerPoint. Was there a moment in your speaking trajectory where you said, okay, I need to level up everything? Like you said, you went from a good amateur to what's the next level?
Bad professional.
A bad professional, and now what's the level that you're at right now? What's your level after bad professional? Is good
Quasi bad
professional,
professional.
awesome professional?
What I would say is, I think always learning professional. I think it's incumbent on all of us to certainly enjoy the wins. Let's spike the ball, but at the same time, let's never rest on our laurels. I'm very proud of
Sure.
my success, but I think that, I'm a student. I'm not a master. I'm always going to be a student.
Yeah, you must have the shared value with me of continuous learning and just not really sitting, although I cannot say I learn at the volume that I think you do. So was there a point when you said, okay, the PowerPoint needs to level up? It could be when you upped your fees 25 to 35 or something like that. You're like, okay, the game needs to go up. When did you decide that you needed to really, because your PowerPoints are extraordinary? What I've seen
Well,
anyway.
thank you. So, yes, I feel like I've tried to make that same reinvention, that plus up that you're talking about, once every 18 months or so.
Okay.
So I did do that once. I went from PowerPoint to Prezi, to be very specific. We're talking
Yes.
technology. So what you saw
Yes.
is using Prezi, Prezi, which
Yeah.
is a very fun and dynamic and beautiful way to do visual design that is better than, in my opinion, than Keynote or PowerPoint. But
Hmm.
what I try to do more importantly than just that technology is that every 18 months, I look at the whole spectrum and say, all right, what are we doing visually on stage? What does
Yeah.
my speaker reel look like? What's the website look like? What's the speaking topics look like? So as speakers, there's like 10 or so core assets that are involved in when someone just evaluates us.
Yep.
speaking reel being the largest one. And so I try to actually reinvent completely about every 18 months. So it's not like you just crack the code and you're like, okay, I never need to do that again. It's
Yeah.
always pushing yourself. And continuous learning is a great concept. I systematize that too, for the record. I actually track I have a number of books read every year goal, and also a number of minutes of learning per week, which I track on my phone, and I have an accountability partner. So every week we have to hold each other accountable for our learning goals. So, but again, back to me, it's just back to systemization.
You're extraordinary. I could really talk to you for hours and hours here. Okay, real quick, let's talk about your demo reel. You've got 20 minutes on there. I don't know if I watched the right one, but I did see something that was a straight up 20-minute. There was a bit of a demo on the front end, and then it was 20 minutes altogether. So it must have been just a long clip on the back end. Talk about your reasoning behind, or what you think makes a great demo video.
So as speakers, our demo reel is the most important marketing asset that we have. And everyone has to make their own decisions. This isn't a mandate, but I've heard that a good benchmark is to spend what you want your speaker fee to be on producing your demo reel. So I think we spent about 40 grand on the last demo reel. I heard a Hollywood movie studio to do it instead of just, and it shows. So whether or not you do that, though, I think the demo reel is so important. Here's how I look at it. I think you need a sizzle reel, which is under 3 minutes for sure, maybe closer to 2. And this is going to spark people's attention, show your excitement. You're sort of earning people's attention 15 seconds at a time. So every 15 seconds or so, someone can click stop. So you better make sure that you're compelling and loading up the front of it with so much juicy excitement that they're compelled to continue. So the sizzle reel, I think, gets you past the disqualification stage. Right. The way a lot of these decisions are made, as you know, is there is a committee meeting and there's 15 people grumpy in the room, and they say, all right, put up speaker number 1. and 18 seconds into someone's video, if they don't like it, they're like, all right, next. And then that's it, game over. So your your sizzle reel allows you hopefully to make it to the short list. So in other words, you've avoided being disqualified from the 15 other options. Mm-hmm. Now you're down to 3 people. It's you and 2 other competitors. The extended portion on my speaker reel, hopefully that's what closes it. So they've got the excitement of the sizzle, but now they can watch you an extended period. They can see you holding an audience for a longer period. They can see you sharing surprising content. They can see you delivering a story to a decent sized audience. And so that's how I look at it. It's really 2 videos. We stitch them together for ease, but it's the sizzle to get their attention and avoid being disqualified, and then the extended video to help close the deal.
Okay, well, I hope everyone will hop on over to joshlinkner.com and check out your reels just to see what that looks like, because the quality is really bar none. And talk about, just for a second before we move off video, would you ever share a full speech online?
Yeah, so there's differences of opinion here, and I respect everybody, so I'm certainly not proselytizing. Sure. My view, though, and it's only my opinion, if you don't like it, you can ignore it, anyone listening. I tell my clients they can share anything they want. They can film my entire speech. They can post it however they want, and send it as wide and deep as they want. My belief is because 2 reasons. One of us, I believe in abundance, not scarcity, so I don't think that hurts me. Second of all, just because someone saw a YouTube video doesn't mean they're not going to hire me to give a speech. That's like someone saying, I read your book, I'm never going to hire you again. So right. Especially because I customize every speech too, I think all it does is it shows your ability to contribute. So if you're one of those people that says, oh, there's only fixed number of ideas in the world, I better try to control them, that's a different story. My opinion is share it wide and deep. And clients love that. Clients like, oh my God, thank you so much. Last year our speaker was a pain in the neck and they wouldn't let me record it. So it also can be a competitive advantage if you're willing to do so.
Sure. And I love when you come at your business from a fearless approach, not doing something based on something that you're fearful of happening. And of course, there's nothing that can compare to you being there live, to you being there on YouTube. That's never going to be the same thing. And I love that you're also sharing that, because I want to talk about your live event. I have my own live event, and I could say, oh, I'm not going to have Josh Linkner on. He's got his own live event. Well, if a person reads my book, it doesn't mean they're not going to read your book. Like, they don't stop at one way of learning, right? It's a continuous approach. And I've had lots of my clients come to your live event, which we'll talk about here in a second. Before we do that, though, let's talk about your website. So you talked about every 18 months, and your website is it looks exactly the way I expected it should look for someone who's at your fee level. It's really clear, really clean. Talk about the latest rendition of it. Did you make it more simple? Has that always been something that you've strived for, to just keep paring it back? Because after a lot of years in the industry, don't you find you can just layer on and then you're throwing too much stuff at people?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. We tried to reverse engineer how would a buyer follow the site and what's important to them.
Yeah,
And nowadays, of course, we're engineering copy as much as for a reader as for Google, because we're trying to improve search rankings and all that, which
right.
is an important thing. But also visually, I wanted to make sure it was visually stunning and look professional. You want good question to ask ourselves, whether it's your photography or your bio or your website. Imagine a senior executive at a major corporation, and they're bringing in their top 500 leaders from all over the world, and it's a really important event. Would they put you in front of their senior leaders? And if your picture is not high def and you got ketchup stains on your tie and your website looks like it was done by your 16-year-old nephew, the answer is no. So, just like if you're going to be a doctor, you want to have good equipment. Our equivalent of the equipment is our website and our speaker reel, and I think we just need to treat it professionally.
And that's often a cart horse situation for people. And I love what one of my clients was Kendra Hall, and what she did early in her career was she had a saying, "We'll speak for video." And so sometimes you need to put yourself into positions, maybe you get paid, maybe you don't, in order to get that great footage. Like, you really want to have the photographs and the footage of the types of engagements that you covet, right? And there you are on your website in this massive room. I don't know how many people were in that room with you with the car on stage for, I don't know what event that was, but great, great, great photography.
Yeah, thank you. But you're right. It doesn't happen overnight. And so my first picture was a lot worse than that one. And over time, we keep getting better. The video on my site now is in front of 9,000 people, but the first
Mm,
speech I did wasn't in front of 9,000 people. So you
right.
just take a little bit at a time and continuously reinvent.
That's
One other point I just wanted to touch on briefly, because I know
sure.
a lot of speakers are on the lines thinking like, okay, is there enough opportunity for me? And Jane, I really admire how much you've shared over the years and helped so many thousands of people enter this
Thank you.
industry. The industry is really much bigger than most people think. And we've done some
Yeah.
actual research. Turns out there's $4 billion of speeches bought and sold in North America every year. $4 billion. And that, of course, ranges from Michelle Obama at the top end down to someone at a Rotary Club. But there's a lot of opportunity. Just this last week, I was in Vegas. I was speaking at Caesars, full fee engagement. And at Caesars, which is one of many hotels in Vegas, there was
Hmm.
5 events happening on this random Tuesday. And I was
Yeah.
the smallest event. So I just kind of walked around, and every other event there had speakers. Many of them were higher paid than me. And they also had smaller ones too, and so the point is this: there's so much opportunity for all of us. And by me sharing my secrets, I don't think it takes anything away. It's just there's plenty for us all. And
Yeah.
I admire how you've shared things over the years, but I just want to encourage people that, yeah, it is a lot of work. You want to treat it seriously like a business, but if you do it right, there's definitely room for all of us to win here together.
Definitely. And I love your philosophy. As Cavett started us off, the pie is big enough. And $4 billion, it seems to me that the pie is not shrinking anytime soon. Let me ask you this: of your engagements that you've done this last year and maybe looking out into the future, have you been webbed in at all? Have you been doing anything that is more virtual? Are you seeing a trend in that? What do you see coming? It seems like you really study this industry. I'd love to know what you think is the way of the future. Rayburn hologram type thing. That was really cool. I don't know if you saw
Wonderful.
my Great Birds.
I did. Yeah, I was there, and I love Mike as a friend too. He's a wonderful person.
Yeah,
I've done a couple hologram ones. I did one for Coca-Cola in Moscow, which is pretty cool. And I've
cool.
done a couple virtual ones, but and nothing wrong with that, by the way. But I do
Sure.
think there's something magical about being present. And
Present.
and yeah, and your host, they're putting on an event because they want to bring people together, not just on a screen. And to have a keynote come in and make that moment special and being present and physically there, I don't see it going away anytime soon anyway. And I mean, maybe 20, 50 years from now, but in the next, decade or so, I think live events are going to continue to flourish. And that's what the research is pointing to. In fact, there's been no slowdown in our business at all. If anything, as you mentioned, it's just growing in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, and like you said, you can walk in any hotel on any given day and see the names on the board and know that there's a lot of meetings going on. I was in Vegas too last week. Okay, so uh, talk about this is my last question, and then I want to talk about your live event. Um, I have a lot of clients who are mentally having a hard time. Even when I spoke in Vegas, actually, there was an Olympic athlete who had won a gold medal who said, well, I could never charge $20,000 for a speech. And I said, well, yeah, you could. You won a gold, right? Yeah, you could. And so, talk about the mental aspects of being able to stand tall in your fees. I know you probably have people ask you this a lot. I know you probably don't have a problem because of your background. However, other people do.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll just give you a quick. So there are a number of things that drive fee, and your background is one of them. If you're very famous, that's one of them. But that's not the only thing. You didn't have to win a gold medal, in fact, to be a higher paid speaker. So a lot of it has to do with your how good you are on stage, how good your marketing materials are, how compelling your message is, how much impact that you create. So there's a handful of other factors that drive both fee and volume. The other thing I'll say is that you don't necessarily have to only talk about things that you did personally. That's another thing that people might say. They say, well, my story isn't worth $20,000.
Right.
That you don't have to tell your whole story. Like, I've had a pretty successful career. I've hired thousands of people. I've sold hundreds of millions of dollars of companies. In a 60-minute keynote, I might talk about myself for 5 minutes max. And the rest of the time, I'm sharing insights and examples from around the world about other folks. And so just because your particular story doesn't have to consume the entire body of your keynote,
Right.
really, a great keynote is about the audience, not about the speaker. So if
Right.
you're there and you can create real value for those folks in the room, I think we shouldn't shy away from setting a fee that is appropriate. Now, in terms of setting a fee that's appropriate, I'll give one little hack just in case anyone is curious. Here's my
Please.
recommendation. Take a look at your materials, your message, your video, your website, your photography, your bio, your testimonial. So take a look at that. And then in whatever category you're in, let's say you're in customer service. And then you say, well, where do I think the fee might be fit? Let's just make a number, $10,000.
Hmm.
So now benchmark yourself against 7 other speakers at that exact same fee. And honestly score yourself. Like, how does my video stack up to theirs? How does and so you
It's
compare
really
yourself
good.
to your competitors. And here's the absolute crystal most important thing. Set your fee where you're going to win 70% of the time. And I'll tell you why. If you set it where you win 100% of the time, you're probably too
Too
low.
low. Yep.
But if you're only winning 50% of the time, here's what's going to happen. You might just get kicked out of the conversation. So if
Mm.
a bureau recommends you 7 times and they only win 1 out of those 7, they might say, I'm just going to stop recommending that speaker. But if they know
Right.
that every time they put your name forward, like 7 out of 10 times they're going to win, they'll keep recommending you like crazy. So I would say, give an honest look in the mirror, get advice from your friends and from you, Jane, or for us, from anyone that you trust, bureau friends, whatever, and see where can I win 70% of the time. When you think you can win 70% of the time, that's the fee you should be at right now.
That is so good. That is so good. What a great idea. And especially for people who are in that range where they're starting to work more and more with bureaus, if you're not getting the traction with bureaus, then like you said, you'll come off the list and they won't submit you anymore. Fantastic. And one of the things that Vince had done, back to the Olympic athlete who didn't win, he worked as hard on getting good on the platform as he did to getting to the Olympics. And so there you go. Talking about just really, really shining on the platform has got to be a part of this mix, right?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And there's that old cheesy saying, there's no shortcuts to anywhere worth going. And I'd certainly apply that for speaking. It's weird because we speak every day. You go to dinner with your friends, you're speaking. But giving a professional keynote is not the same as just having a conversation. And so I just would encourage everybody to treat it with the same rigor and discipline and focus and commitment to excellence that you would if you were going to be a neurosurgeon or a specialist of any kind.
That's
And
really
again,
good.
I'm a student. I'm not a master, but I think we should always be students, and we should always be trying to really. I watch tape almost every day. I'm watching tape of myself and others, just like an athlete would, trying to improve your game. And I just hope we all can elevate our industry by treating it with the absolute highest level of professionalism.
So you operate out of Michigan and you bring people to you, which is brilliant. I love that. Talk about the Three Ring Circus, your live event. You do it every quarter. Tell everybody what that looks like.
Yeah, so like you, Jane, I know you're passionate about helping people get their messages out and helping them, get on stage and make an impact on the world. And in our case, we developed a pretty snappy way of building a speaking business. And I decided to share that. Again, I really just wanted to help the industry that we love and our bureau friends. So we have a funny name company called Threering Circus. It's a little self-deprecating and just trying to be playful because, after all, it's a circus out there. But basically what we do is we take a decade of learning and once a quarter we smush it into one day. And we train people on every aspect of the speaking business. It's an intense, overwhelming day. There's only 25 people max, so we keep it really small and intimate. Our business has official advisors from Washington Speakers Bureau, Harry Walker, Premier, Speak Inc., and others. And so every time we also bring bureau executives. So there's always like 4 or 5 bureau executives joining a small group of speakers. And it's this open heart, open mind, just warm, sharing, family kind of vibe. And we just help people either launch or scale their speaking business. And we just share in total transparency, full on, open kimono, exactly what we've done and what we learn our best practices. So that's what we do. We do make a little bit of money on it. It's not my main revenue stream at all. It's
Sure.
something that we're doing more is because we love the industry and we're trying to make a difference. And I'll tell you, we've had hundreds of people come through and some amazing success stories. I get notes from people saying, hey, my fee before I came was $7,500. Now my fee is 30 grand and I'm booked solid. So it's
That's
really neat to see that
awesome.
type of results.
Well, I love that you have studied this and put all these systems and practices in play. And, I don't know when I stumbled across Three Ring Circus. Like I said, a few of my clients had gone there, but you may have influenced the Wealthy Speaker School because we've done the same thing with the school. And I just really think that there's room in the market for lots of different ways of learning. And I'm so excited that people could have an opportunity to come and spend a day with you because I think they're going to get a hell of a lot out of it. So congratulations on that. And get your butts up here to, do you fly into Detroit? Where do you locate your Three Ring Circus?
Yeah, we do it in Detroit, my hometown, and it's actually a really fun city. It's this beautiful, dynamic city that's on the rebound. But yeah, we do it once a quarter, and then we also offer sort of one-on-one coaching services for people that don't or want or can't make it to Detroit.
Okay, cool. Talk us just a second. Give Detroit a little bit of a shout out. I know I live in London, Ontario, so I live 2 hours from you, Josh, and I know that Detroit is indeed on the rebound. Talk about that a little bit because you write for the newspaper there, don't you?
I do. So I was born in the city of Detroit, not the suburbs, as were my parents and grandparents. So I have a
Wow.
deep connection, and to me, it's a city with a soul. And it's a fascinating example, by the way, of what happens when we stand still. I mean, 100 years ago, Detroit was like Silicon Valley. I mean, this was the place to be.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
then we really, frankly, we lost our way and we
Yeah.
became complacent. And so what I think is happening now in Detroit is really exciting, where we're trying to recapture our mojo. And this once broken city, it's really now rising from the ashes. And I
Yeah.
really believe will be studied for decades to come as one of the greatest turnaround stories in American history.
I
So
think
we got a long way to go. It's still, it's still a work in progress, but there are beautiful things happening in Detroit. New restaurants, new art galleries, new buildings coming back to life. And I'm really optimistic about our future.
that's awesome. Well, I really wanted you to share that with people because I don't think people know. I know because I get the Detroit news and I hear all the things that are good that are going on in the city. And I think, yeah, they're really on the upswing. This is really great to see. And I'm so happy for you and your city. And I know that you probably contribute immeasurably to that. One final little thing I want to talk about. How cool was it to get an award from the President of the United States? Like, come on. That is just amazing.
I'm so grateful. President Barack Obama, who putting politics aside, I respect tremendously, and he was a dignified, honorable man. Again, putting politics aside, it's just nice to see that type of sincerity and professionalism in a leader compared to perhaps our current state. But anyway, it was
We
wonderful.
can't go there.
Yeah, no,
Talk
it's
about
tricky.
your
But anyway,
award.
but I got this award. It's called the Champion of Change Award because of the work that we've done in Detroit, helping to rebuild our city. We invested in a lot of entrepreneurs and really poured a lot of money and resources into downtown Detroit, trying to rebuild it as a place of optimism and hope. And so I was recognized. I mean, so grateful beyond. And I'll tell you, I've met a lot of celebrities. I've never really starstruck, but when I met President Obama, my jaw dropped. He just had so much charisma. He lit up the room, and he just like
Yeah,
bounced in there. And I gave him a signed copy of my book. And I'll tell you, it was one of my thrills of my life. I'm so grateful for that privilege, and it was an
that's
amazing
awesome.
experience.
Oh my gosh, that kind of makes me cry because I just think about what else is there? That's like the pinnacle in my mind. And you went from being a jazz, we didn't even talk about you being a musician. Just tell me really quickly, how did you make that leap?
Well, I started playing guitar over 40 years ago, and I put myself through college playing music. I used to play gigs in Detroit, and I've been playing for years. I still perform regularly, actually.
Awesome.
And what happened was I had the opportunity to start a company. I never knew what a company was. I didn't never taken a business class, but jazz is all about improvisation. And I decided I was going to improvise my way at age 20 to starting a tech company. And I made tons of mistakes, by the way. It wasn't perfect, but I've been sort of doing that ever since. And even today, I mean, I often talk about music in a keynote. Only about 5% of the time, I will incorporate live jazz in a keynote. So I will hire local musicians and we'll perform and even invite the audience to come up and jam with the band. So it's
That's
a
cool.
really upbeat, memorable, energizing experience. But I just love jazz, whether you like listening to it or not. I just love the idea that it's real-time innovation. That you have to
Yeah.
forge ahead, you have to course correct. A lot about jazz isn't even so much playing it right. It's knowing you're going to screw up and then figuring out how to course correct. So you build creative resilience and confidence, knowing how you're going to be able to bounce back in the inevitable setbacks.
Wow. Josh Linkner, you are a treasure trove of information, interesting. My goodness, we could sit here and unpack all day long. I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy schedule to be on the Wealthy Speaker podcast.
Oh, truly my pleasure. And I wish you continued success and all your listeners. And again, I realize there's a lot of work involved in being a speaker, but man, there's so much opportunity. It's such a wonderful gift to the world, and it'll feed your soul. So I just encourage everyone to continue to pursue their passion.
Thank you, Josh. And where do they go if they want to know more about Threering Circus? We'll put that in the show
It's just
notes.
cool. It's just Threering Circus, the number 3, the numeral 3, ringcircus.com. And
Okay.
if you want to learn more about me, just my website is joshlinkner.com.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on the show today. Well, listeners, if you didn't get a lot out of this one, I don't think you should listen here anymore. This was probably, it's going to go down in the record books for me. Thank you, Josh, for being here. And if you've appreciated this, Wealthy Speaker listeners, please give us a shout out. Let us know. Ratings, reviews, do all that good stuff out on wherever you're listening to the podcast. And we appreciate you listening. And with that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our show, you'll want to come and visit us at the Wealthy Speaker School, where we provide a proven roadmap for building your dream business. Go to wealthyspeakerschool.com. And for show notes for today's podcast, head on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on podcast. I'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers.